Now, obviously, I need to start this video out with last night's cover boy. That was 1% owned. That went out and dominated. Let's roll that clip. I'm going to start out with Mark Williams. This sounds weird, but I think just given the price point, given the upside that he could have on the slate if he gets 22 minutes or so, I do want to be going out of my way to play him. Now, that was pretty awesome. Mark Williams obviously was a huge beast for us last night. Hopefully, you guys were on him, and hopefully we can give you a pick like that tonight. So let's go ahead and get into tonight's slate. If you enjoy the coverage, make sure to give a like and subscribe. So starting out with the guards on this slate, we do have some injury news to go through once again. That is going to impact the full guard situation. Obviously, a lot of the Orlando guards are going to be out. We got Jalen Suggs, we got Cole Anthony. They're both out. They got suspended for one game, as well as some players from Detroit, and as well as some of the bigs for Orlando. With that, I do really think we can go with Franz Wagner. He should be a very good play on tonight's slate. His usage rate with those two guards off the court, just looking at that, is going to be 25%, and his fantasy point total per 36, and those minutes should be closer to 36 tonight, is around 35. So I think he's going to be a very good play. Love the fact that we can play him at guard or at forward tonight. That's going to be huge. But I think Markelle Fultz could really come into his own tonight and have a really spectacular game. He's already been shooting the ball a decent amount as of recent, and now he's going to be forced into more minutes. The last time he got over 30 minutes, he put up 47 DK points. And just with the one-game suspension to all those players, those minutes should be there for him once again. His stats with those players off the court is 21% usage rate and a fantasy point total per 36 of over 35 fantasy points. So really, we do need those minutes to be there. But even if they're not, against Washington, we're probably going to get around 30 fantasy points. I think he's going to be a top play on the slate once we get to the core play section. And then just looking at some other guard situations on the slate, Devin Booker going to be listed out, okay? And then if Cam Payne is out, he is nearing return, but if he is out once again, I think we can certainly look at Washington again. Last game only saw 17 minutes. That game was more of a blowout. I don't know if that was part of the reason why he only got 17 minutes. I believe at half he was like at 13 DK points or so, which obviously given the price tag, that is something you would certainly take. Now the price tag has bumped up, so we do have to start thinking about it. At 3.2, if you got 18 DK points, you were perfectly happy with that. Whereas now at 3.7, we do have to start thinking about it. Someone that, if you end up on, you're fine with. I wouldn't say he's exactly a shoulder shrug play where you're not going out of your way to play him, because I do think there's a path in which you could go out of your way to play him as it sits right now with the value as it sits right now. But maybe as the night develops where there's some better clear-cut value, maybe he does become more of a shoulder shrug play where if you end up on him, you're fine with it. You're not rebuilding. Trae Young, currently questionable. If he sits, I think we just go with DeJounte Murray. Averages over 40 fantasy points per 36 with him off the court. That would kind of be an easy one. De'Aaron Fox gets a great matchup tonight against Utah. That's going to be the game that everyone wants to attack. And so I think he'd be someone that could easily go out and break the slate, or just be someone that, puts up a safe 40 DK points. That is what should happen tonight. Just feel like I always need to mention this. LeBron currently questionable. If he sits, you're just locking in Westbrook, kind of as simple as that. Jordan Clarkson in that same game that we want to be targeting. We're looking at Fox, we're looking at Jordan Clarkson. He only put up 28 DK points, but he did have 22 points last game. The rebounds and assists were just down a little bit. Okay, that is where I like Jordan Clarkson, just shooting the ball a ton, gets a great matchup, gain a lot of minutes. And he's still not priced up enough. Like, I would say just given his production and consistency, he should be maybe 7.4. Just lock in that price. The full season where Lauri Markkanen had been very underpriced, I guess at the beginning of the season. That's kind of been Jordan Clarkson lately. So I do think that's a spot where we can take advantage of the pricing. Then looking at Detroit as well, Detroit's going to have some decent value available just because Killian Hayes is out. So with just Hayes out, Jaden Ivey has a 25.4% usage rate, and his fantasy point total per 36 is going to be 35. Can we project him to get 36 minutes? Probably not. So with him, we're most likely just looking at around 25 DK points, which could be enough. Alec Burks is probably going to be everyone's favorite GPP play, just given his recent production. 49 DK points last game, 32 DK points the previous game. Gets a matchup that you're not worried about. And then obviously with Hayes off, that should benefit Burks as well. Burks has a 25% usage rate with him off the court, and his fantasy point total per 36 is going to be 37. So if we can just get 30 minutes out of him, I do think there's a possibility that we could get 30 DK points. Probably should be getting at least 25, if he's going to be playing around 30 minutes. And I just want to point this out just so people realize 10 for 11. That's not going to happen again in his previous game. But the game before that, 3 for 11 and put up 32. So hopefully we can just see something in between that, not too cold shooting, not too hot. I mean, obviously it'd be great if he was hot shooting, but I think the expectation should be that he's not going to be that hot shooting the basketball. Corey Joseph, I think if you end up on him, I don't hate that completely. So one of the stranger like chalk things that we've seen was Pat Connaughton being chalked 2 nights ago. It just was very strange logic. He was actually higher priced than Grayson Allen and even Joe Ingles, where it was just strange. I don't really get the thought process behind that, behind making him chalk. I get the thought process of him being a fine GPP play, someone that you play hoping that he gets hot shooting the 3 ball. But like Grayson Allen was kind of the safer play and the more upside play. Like the only way you ended up on Pat Connaughton is if Grayson Allen was lower owned. That was just strange to me. I think we can all admit that now. I'm not sure if any of you guys ate that chalk. It was just strange. Okay. Grayson Allen really didn't get that much more of a price bump. And I wish he was under 4K, but he shot 14 3 balls. And yes, that game went into overtime, but he was shooting the ball terribly. If he just makes a couple more of those, he's easily hitting value. And so with Drew Holiday still out, I think we could potentially be looking at Grayson Allen, okay? Not a play that you're going to be locking and loading, but at the same time, like if you end up on him, you're fine with it. And just touch on that, like Pat Connaughton, I didn't get it. I feel like I warned people enough. I know I did on the Occupy Fantasy live stream that I do NBA DFS coverage wise. He just had a good night shooting against Boston. I feel like people just kind of ate that up. I'm not saying that can't happen again. It was just strange. I was honestly kind of baffled by it. And I felt like I told people enough to be on him. Kind of like Mark Williams last night where less than 1% owned. I felt like I talked him up enough. It's kind of like, come on, what are we doing here? So Malachi Flynn was someone in the last night's game, saw 30 minutes, didn't shoot the basketball well, but still scored 24 DK points. So if he's someone that's going to be thrust into more minutes with Fred VanVleet out potentially tonight, then we could be looking at him as well. That would be a good value price point play at the guard position. Ty Jerome, I think, is firmly in play still. Saw 30 minutes in the previous game. Injury dependent. If we get news that Dante DiVincenzo is going to sit, then maybe we're looking at Ty Jerome. Either way, something that's an okay play regardless. Austin Rivers still playing a lot. Had 6 personal fouls in the last game. That's obviously not going to help. Only 5 real life points, but we're getting a guy that's can shoot the ball maybe around 7 times in a game and then make, a few of them get to 20 DK points or so. Like that's not out of the realm of possibilities. Obviously that hasn't happened lately, but we could be getting around 20 DK points out of him. Someone you could potentially look at. George Hill. George Hill saw 28 minutes in the last game. Not really a great DFS play, really, but at the same time, it wouldn't be shocking to see him have a good game with Drew Holiday out. I do think we need to pull up Javon Carter as well. Javon Carter was very strange with his usage in the last game. Only 3 shot attempts, okay? And obviously with that, you're not going to score that many points. Was really just not an asset at all in that game. Typically speaking, with Drew Holiday off the court, he averages 17.5% usage rate, and his fantasy point total per 36 is around 37. Okay, didn't get that many minutes. Just was strange that he wasn't that productive. Okay, kind of took a back seat. And then I do want to point out Terrence Ross as well. Almost the minimum price. You can play him at the guard or forward position. He is someone that if he does get around 20 minutes or so, which he should probably get tonight, just with the the suspension situation for the Magic. He should be getting some minutes. So 18 or so DK points. Wouldn't be shocking to see him get to 6x tonight, just given that soft price tag. And then one last guard play that I want to touch on. And the unfortunate thing is that we might not get the news before lock, but if we get news that Jamal Murray's going to sit, currently questionable, then we'd be looking at Bones Highland. We'd just pretty much be locking him in. Just looking at the games with Jamal Murray off the court, Bones Highland has a 30% usage rate, and his fantasy point total per 36 is going to be 40 fantasy points. So that is absolutely crazy. If we could get that at this price tag, that would be huge. Also want to point out the fact that Bruce Brown, currently questionable. If he were to sit as well, that would just elevate Bones Highland as I hate using the lock word, but we might be having to target him. And then at that same time, Braun would be someone that we could potentially be looking at for value, although I don't think we're going to need to go there on this slate. All right, so now we go ahead and get into the forwards. So let's start out with the Orlando situation as well, because they have a lot of their bigs out just in general. So let's just look at kind of all the players out for Orlando. Okay, we can see Wagner, already got the guards. Carter's out. Okay, Gary Harris, Mo Bamba, Kiki, Jonathan Isaac still out. But we can see a lot of them are out. So that's going to lead to some minutes being dispersed amongst all of them. Okay, so if we look at Banchero, forward wise, he should be a good play on tonight's slate. Now, the interesting thing is if you just look at his production with just the guards out for Orlando, his fantasy point total per 36 is only 37%. But if you look at his fantasy point total per 36 with the bigs out, it's around 42. So just kind of interesting there. I think he's someone we can play. Not excited to go out of my way to play him though, which is kind of strange. I thought I would like him a little bit more. And then just looking at a couple of the other bigs, obviously Wagner already mentioned him, Ross already mentioned him. Caleb Houston is expected to start, and now he has a poor usage rate with those Orlando bigs off the court, only 8%, which we don't love. And then his fantasy point total per 36 is only 16.6. Still, if we're going to be getting someone starting at the minimum price, it really doesn't take much for them to hit value. You know, if we can get, let's say 30 minutes and lock in 16 or so DK points, like that is a little bit difficult to pass up on, although definitely not a lock-in though. Definitely not a play you need to go out of your way to play. Kevin Harris is someone that saw some minutes in the previous game as well. 16 DK points there. If we get news that he's starting, you know, you could potentially look at him. Schofield is someone that I think I would like the most if we got news that he was starting. Even if he's not, the minutes still should be there in theory. He does have a pretty good usage rate with those bigs off the court, 14.2, and his fantasy point total per 36 is 23.6. Now, the minutes distribution is a lot smaller for Schofield as it is for Houston. Houston has a lot more minutes, so I do expect Houston to start with those bigs off the court. And then also Bobo, you know, probably center, but he is someone that's going to benefit tonight. 15.7% usage rate, around 34 fantasy points per 36. And I think we can actually project him to get around 30 minutes. So that's at 4.8. We've already seen him have some huge ceiling games. Like, it wouldn't be shocking to see him have one of those, but at the same time, going to be tough for him not to at least hit value. So he is someone I think we're going to be going out of our way to play. Now, looking at the rest of the fours on the slate, I still really love Giannis. Giannis with Drew Holiday off the court, it has just been a beast, okay? 41% usage rate with Drew Holiday off the court. 41. That is crazy, okay? His fantasy point total per 36 is 60 with Drew Holiday off the court. So he is someone that we definitely need to be going out of our way to play. Obviously just went for 84 against the Bulls, and this team really just needs a win. Been on a little bit of a slide. They probably should have won against Chicago, so they need a win, okay? So I kind of expect him to really be geared up, ready to play. Siakam firmly in play as well. He just continues to play well with Fred VanVleet out. That should only help him. The minutes, I mean, he is getting way too many minutes right now, to be honest with you. But if he continues to get those minutes, yeah, he's going to be something that's tough to ignore as well. I mentioned that game between Utah and the Kings. Lauri Markkanen has been a stud recently, you know, been playing a lot of minutes. That game is expected to stay close. If it stays close, you would expect Lauri Markkanen to go off and have a great game. I'm actually going to show you guys at the end of this video how to go ahead and stack that game, because I think that's going to be something that we want to go ahead and do. Jeremy Grant is back tonight. We have seen him have some huge upside games, you know, not someone you are going out of your way to play, but maybe you chase him a little bit, you know, 5%, hoping for that GPP upside. Scotty Barnes, I'm firmly fine with. 3 straight games of over 40 DK points. You know, obviously went through a little bit of a lull, but if we get news that Fred VanVleet is indeed going to be out tonight again, then I think we're looking at Scotty Barnes. Very cheap price tag for someone that could easily go for 40 DK points. I would say both the Bogdanoviches are going to be in play tonight. Detroit's, obviously with the news of some of the Detroit players sitting, he's someone we can look at. Atlanta, only if Trae Young sits, I think we could potentially look at. I don't love either of them. I'm not going out of my way to play either of them. And then Bay as well for the Detroit Pistons. He is someone that I think is going to be pretty popular tonight. With Hayes off the court, he does have a 21% usage rate and a fantasy point total per 36 of over 31. So obviously that's huge. And if we can get those minutes like we had in the previous game, wouldn't be shocking to see him have a good game. But I think a lot of people are going to be chasing, you know, really the 50 DK point night, but also he did just come off of a 27 DK point night. He's going to be someone that, given the price tag, is very difficult to pass up on. Hachimura here as well. Just kind of want to point out the minutes have been consistently there for him. And, you know, it's just not shocking to see him have these kind of spike games, and the price tag really hasn't corrected itself yet. So if we do get around 20 minutes out of him, it wouldn't be shocking to see him put up 30 DK points or so. You know, a GPP play only, but definitely someone I think we can try to play in a decent amount of our builds. And then let's go ahead and get into the center situation. So I do think I'm going to be going out of my way to play Sabonis, just trying to chase that game really. Obviously been just on a tear recently. Tough to ignore that. Even with his thumb injury, you know, he is still able to go out and dominate against Denver. This is going to be another high-scoring game, and also the Utah bigs are not that great, so you kind of expect Sabonis to be able to feast against them. DeAndre Ayton is someone we can certainly entertain with Devin Booker off the court. A little bit inconsistent, so I don't know if you could play him in cash or anything like that, but going to be a strong GPP play, just given the upside that he has. Wouldn't be shocking to see him go for 45 plus DK points tonight. The matchup with Toronto is not preferred, but at the same time, very soft price tag. Bobby Portis and also Brook Lopez are going to be players I'm looking at on tonight's slate. Actually, with Drew Holiday off the court, Bobby Portis is the one that benefits the most. I don't know if if many people noticed that in the previous game or if it was just because he had been on a bad stretch, but he was pretty low owned, lower owned than I thought he would be. He has a 24% usage rate with Drew off the court, and his fantasy point total per 36 is 39 fantasy points. Now, obviously, he hasn't been getting those minutes, so probably not going to get 39 fantasy points, but let's say he has a decent night shooting. And you could almost say he had decent night shooting last game, 38 DK points. Maybe we're getting 32. A fine play. Someone if you end up on, you're fine with it. Brook Lopez, I also like, he is someone that benefits with Drew off the court, more or less just raises his floor up. Wouldn't be shocking to see him get 30 DK points. But really, I think we're going back to the bigs that we were on the last 2 times that we saw them. Jalen Duren, and this is only if Bagley's out, because the 20 minutes or so that Bagley gets are going to be spread amongst him and Isaiah Stewart. But Duren has just been really on a tear, and so I'm going to continue to chase that, okay? Last 2 games with Bagley banged up, 36 and 38 DK points. That is very difficult to ignore given the price tag. Like, we could be getting a significant DK production at a cheap price tag. And then Onyeka Okongwu as well. I think it's tough not to love him as well. The previous 2 games, had been in foul trouble, and this is with Clint Capella out. Previous 2 games have been in foul trouble, didn't get into foul trouble against Brooklyn, put up 43 DK points. So that's really what we're got to be focusing on. Is he getting into foul trouble or not? The matchup with the Lakers isn't one that worries me, with obviously Anthony Davis still banged up. So I don't expect him to get into foul trouble. So thus, I think we could easily be playing both Duren and Okongwu in our builds. So now let's go ahead and get into my core plays for this slate. So I do want to point out Bones Highland. If Jamal Murray is out, then you just pretty much have to be locking in Bones Highland, especially if Bruce Brown is out as well. Gets a huge usage rate just with Jamal Murray off the court. His fantasy point total per 36 is 40 fantasy points. So, and I think we can accurately project those minutes to be there. So yes, it's a late night game, and that makes it more difficult. Obviously, as the day progresses, we'll be able to wait and see on that news. Hopefully, we get that news before lock. And then I do really love Sabonis. I think we're going to get 50 DK points out of him, but I'm having a tough time passing up on that potential 30 DK points from both Jalen Duren, with Bagley most likely sitting, and then also the 30 DK points or higher from Onyeka Okongwu. But kind of playing these 2, it's already looking more or less like a GPP only build here. That's kind of what it's starting to skew towards. And now we get into Detroit, like another GPP play, a big upside play is Alec Burks. Obviously with Killian Hayes out, Burks is someone that should benefit, and he has been. With him off the court, his fantasy point total per 36 is 37. So if we can get 30 DK points out of him at a cheap price tag like this, that is highly appealing. And then I do really love Giannis with Drew Holiday off the court. I think we are going to be getting at least 55 DK points. Obviously, you want more out of that, and I think there's the potential that we could be getting 7. I want to be playing Giannis on tonight's slate. And then really, guys, honestly, just looking at the Magic value that's out there, Bol just at a cheap price tag, probably going to get 30 DK points out of him. I love the fact that we can play Wagner at either the forward or guard position. You could easily play him at the forward position, cheap price tag for someone that could easily go for 30 DK points. Then we have a lot of salary left over to kind of close out this build, okay? Ideally, I'd probably like to be on Fultz. I think that's a cheap price tag for him, but obviously too much salary left over. Let's try to find someone we can finish this build out with. I love Jordan Clarkson. I think that's a cheap price tag, and that's kind of what I'm looking at on this slate. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the coverage. If you did, you know what to do. Give a like and subscribe. That helps me continue to be able to put out more content for you guys. All right, let's have a good slate. Another good slate. Let's have another Mark Williams. All right. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.